AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Oliver Christie. Oliver is a senior AI consultant and AI futurist. Oliver, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Nice to be here.
Oh, glad to have you. So, Oliver, as a senior AI consultant and advisor, your role varies depending on the clients that you're helping. Some very interesting companies along the way. If you could give us a bit of an overview of your background and some of the companies that you advise to, please.
Yes, absolutely. So originally I had a math background back in the UK and doing early kind of machine learning stuff. This was over 20 years ago. But we were going through one of the AI winters, so I sort of turned left, became a broker-dealer in the financial services industry, foreign exchange, that sort of thing. And then came back towards machine learning, or AI as we now call it. And I've been in New York for the last 10 years doing that.
You've talked to me previously about some of the advisory work that you do. Could you give us some recent examples of how you're helping businesses navigate the world of AI?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, some of the bigger corporations who are clients are looking for sort of what's the impact of AI going to be over the next few years? How is it going to shape their industry and their products? What will service look like? So it's much more than just sticking a bot on something or the kind of more basic things that are happening at the moment. But what's the bigger transformation? So it's, for Cadillac, it was reimagining what the personalized experience inside a car might be. So a vehicle that really knows who you are, responds to what's happening in the journey, and it becomes altogether more personal. So it's not the self-driving car piece, but the experience piece, shall we say. And then similar work for sort of banks, insurance companies, a few things in retail. We're also redesigning an airport. So it's at the moment it's a spec project, but the idea becomes, if you start with a blank sheet of paper and none of the normal sort of business rules that you might have, what would you build? And when we were thinking about this, the kind of, well, ideally you'd have something which would eliminate jet lag. So a long haul flight, we can pretty much know what the mechanics of jet lag are, but you need to restructure the building and the environment to help that. So it's a sort of fun challenge. It's something very different. It's a different way of looking at massive infrastructure, different way of looking at architecture. So these are some of the projects I'm involved in.
Amazing. So you're getting to work on a lot of the conceptual aspects of AI and thinking several steps down the line rather than the gradual progression of this technology. We spoke previously about some of the challenges that industries are having, and vast sums of data as they're now coming available. One of the points you touched on, which I think would be good to discuss again, is bias in data, how that's shaping all future decisions, and what companies need to be aware of, and what we can do as a society to try and battle that massive bias.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, we do have a lot more data. I mean, there's vast quantities of data out there if you look for it. The problem is a lot of it is duplication. So it's not necessarily giving the picture of the world that you want. It's well worth digging into that data and say, well, what's really happening here? So whereas some of the AI we have at the moment might work very well, it's actually typically only working very well for some people. So speech to text is not fantastic for me all the time. It fails a little bit too much simply because my voice hasn't been trained enough. My voice isn't in the training set. Image recognition has some major failures if you're, for instance, African American, female, and especially on the older side. This is something that tech companies are realizing, as it's pointed out, but it's something that's missing. You've also got kind of examples where fairness in society gets built into the sort of AI recommendation system. So it might be for a loan for a house, or it might be a sentencing guideline. The AI system is only as smart as the knowledge that's being put in. And frankly, if that example that's being put in is fairly biased to begin with, it gets duplicated. It's simply a mirror onto society. It amplifies the best and the worst of who we are.
It's going to be very difficult to change unless there's some major shift from top down. And when I say top down, I'm thinking from government level, because we're seeing some countries run towards this and embrace technology. I think Estonia, some of the Scandinavian countries, and China are good examples of that. It would be great to get your perspective on what role governments can play to either advance or slow down the development of this technology.
Well, I think the first thing to say is governments need to be involved. I see the best governments around the world are getting involved, are trying to understand what the technology is and what the impact can be, both good and bad. Estonia is a great example. They kind of jumped onto things quite early. They said, yes, we want to be our citizens to be digital natives, to be connected, and this is how we want the government to run. You have other countries who are somewhat ignoring the technology. So it's not that there's regulation in place. There actually isn't typically, but it's being ignored. So government isn't sort of helping with the progress part, shall we say. I think taking the US as an example, what the US has is a huge amount of capital. It's very good at funding things and creating innovation that way. But innovation is also being stifled as immigration becomes harder. Whereas, say, China is becoming much more open to, should we call it, intellectual immigration, and they've got a huge amount of data thanks to how the government operate there. Whereas the EU seems to be taking a different tact. It's becoming much more ethical, so taking an ethical stance on personal data, on what should happen. And I think it might be that the EU takes a lead on certain types of AI application over everyone else.
There's interesting trends already showing. Is that how you see it developing over the next few years, where China take a lead role in certain aspects, and then the EU focus on the ethical side, and the US will focus on the capitalistic aspect, but haven't really embraced as much as maybe we would have expected them to, based on the revenue potentials?
Yeah, in some respects, it's oversimplification to describe it in such basic terms. But on the other hand, you're not going to get really big healthcare AI systems being built in the US at scale, simply because the citizens here don't want to give up their personal data. They know if they give up their personal data, their insurance is going to go up. Whereas you go to, say, the Netherlands, and after having a couple of conversations, it was possible to get the health records of every single citizen there, because they know things are going to be treated in a certain way and it's going to benefit all of society. So I think it's dependent on what the DNA of each country is as to what's going to be built there. So it's somewhat of, what is that country good at the moment? What does it excel at on a national level? And that's some of the AI, or some of the application that's going to be built out of that. So I think every country around the world is going to be impacted and improve, and it's really a case of what's each country going to do.
Here at Alldus, we want to make the hiring process easier for all. Whether you're an employer or an aspiring employee, we have the service for you. For full-time work, Alldus will partner with you to find the best person for the position. Using both our network and our rigorous qualification process, we ensure that only the best talent is shortlisted. We will manage the process and work with you to select our most suitable candidate for your organisation. We also offer excellent temp hiring services. At Alldus, we provide a great opportunity to help you and our candidate make the right choice. The contract period is one long interview for your full-time opening, and the extended experience with our consultant helps you make the best decision. Alldus International is here to quickly help you find the best AI candidate. Our experts stay in close contact with our consultants throughout the duration of the contract, ensuring they have everything they need to get the job done.
We were speaking previously about what's coming down in the short, medium, and possibly long term, and you talked about some of the blind spots we seem to have already. Could you talk a bit more about that and share your thoughts on what we're not seeing and how that could be missed opportunities, but also impacting things negatively?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think there are a lot of blind spots. So whenever you see something which you kind of go, well, that doesn't quite seem to work, or rather, it doesn't work for me or my situation, then there's something wrong there with what's being built. I mean, it might work for some people in the society or some types of business, but quite often it's a little bit lacking. But out of this, I think there's a big opportunity, and the opportunity is to get more people involved. So now on a team, I quite often recommend for every one data scientist, you have 10 people who are experts in their field. So if you're doing something kind of food-based, make sure you've got a chef on board and you're talking to the chef about what makes good food and a flavor palette and the practicalities of, say, running a restaurant or whatever it might be. If you miss that industry expert, if you miss the person with the deep knowledge, the solution is never going to be as good as it can be. So I think it's just acknowledging that a blind spot is there and then figuring out, well, who do you talk to create the stronger picture, should we say.
I see. Some of your advisory roles involve consulting and helping organizations shape future structure of their engineering and data science teams. Where do you see that developing over time? And for people who are currently working in data science and data engineering, what should they be looking towards as continuous personal development, which is key to staying relevant in this space?
Yeah, no, fantastic question. I think to stay relevant is to try and read broadly, to try and see what's happening in either parallel industries or very different situations. So you might find a solution in the sort of medical field for imaging, which you can apply very differently for something that's going to be useful for you. It seems that every industry is developing at a different rate, using different tools and different approaches. So you can learn an awful lot by looking around and seeing how other organizations, other people are thinking about problems. And they don't have to be from your industry. We're still at sort of some early stages in terms of best practice and so on. So I think it's kind of reading broadly really helps.
Absolutely. Well, with all the possibilities available, and your role as futurists, you often get to sort of imagine best case scenario of what this technology can do. What are you most excited about? What's coming down the line that you're really looking forward to, and what industries can we expect to be changed the most from AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think all industries will be impacted to a different degree, and I think it's quite exciting because it means that your idea of what a bank is, a hospital, a car, a school, all of these things can be changed. They can be challenged, and with the sort of exciting technologies, you can rethink, well, what is the purpose of that industry? It can be radically changed, and that change is possible. And people are starting to wake up to the fact that something should shift. So, but I think more than anything, it's not the technology, it's the people. It's getting back to what is going to make us happiest as a society, what is going to have the biggest impact for everyone. The technology can really aid in that, but it's only going to really work if everyone's involved. So I think diversity, more than anything else, is helping to create much better AI. So it's diversity of experience and knowledge and background. Through this, as a group, you end up asking much better questions, and the solution is always better. So I'm hoping that that this makes us more human, that the technology frees us up to kind of think more broadly on complex situations.
Absolutely. Well, Oliver, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm fascinated to learn more about what's in store from yourself. As a futurist, you seem to be able to predict what's coming, and it gets us all excited. So I really appreciate your time. You've been listening to AI in Action with Oliver Christie.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.